So what can you show me that my heart don't know already? We make our own sense. You're qualified in me. What can you show me that my heart don't know already? We make our own sense, and you're qualified in me.
Okay. Welcome to the newest podcast for automotive, finance, and insurance professionals, Life in the Box. I'm so glad you've taken the time to tune in and listen. This show will be comprised of interviews with what I like to call boxers. These are men and women who are in the dealership, grinding it out, spinning paper, working the box, if you will, on a daily basis. We'll also interview directors, and with any luck, we'll get some general managers and dealer principals to chime in. That should be fun. Each episode, we will cover a specific topic that's been chosen by the boxer we interviewed the prior week, so you all get to decide the direction of the show. We're always looking for people to come on the air with us, so if you are interested, listen until the end and I will give you all of the information you need. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm your host, Chris Cochran. I've spent a total of 15 years in the car industry so far. In that time, I have worked for dealerships that have sold 30 cars a month to single-point used car stores that sell 1,400 cars a month. I've held the position of finance manager, finance director, sales manager, and general sales manager. My writings have been published in Wards and Auto Success magazines and are available on LinkedIn if you're interested. I've been featured in Automotive News along with F&I and Showroom magazine. Due to the success I had with a subprime marketing campaign that I organized, I was invited to speak on a panel at the Industry Summit in Las Vegas. More importantly than all of that, I'm married to a wonderful woman and I have two beautiful little girls. Now before we move on to our first interview, I want to give you all a little background. This interview was done over the phone, so please excuse the audio quality. We attempted to re-record the interview several times, and although the quality was much better, the content just simply wasn't there. So without further delay, here's episode 1 of Life in the Box. Now in this episode, we will discuss what it's like for new boxers, those of you just starting out. My guest today is Mike Allen. Mike has spent many years in the industry and has held front-end positions from sales to finance director. I'll let Mike tell you more about himself. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be on the show with you, and I'm honored to be your first guest. Likewise, we come from very similar backgrounds. Started off selling cars right out of high school. Worked on the variable side my whole career, working my way up the ladder from sales personnel to floor closer to desk to finance, back to desk to finance again, and inevitably holding the position to a finance director. I worked and started up in the Northeast region and inevitably migrated my way down to Florida. Currently, I'm holding the position of finance director.
Excellent. You want to tell the listeners a little bit about how you and I connected?
Oh, absolutely. Social media is a wonderful thing these days when it comes to networking and connecting with like-minded individuals like ourselves. And like you, I've met many other like-minded individuals. Yeah, we got in contact about 3 years ago, one snowy January when I was up in Pittsburgh spinning paper, or essentially a lack of spinning paper. If any of you listeners out there are familiar with the Northeast, in January in the snow and negative 25, there's not too many hot prospects or car deals coming your way, so it leaves a lot of time for the mind to wander. And I shot out a kind of a Hail Mary, anybody looking for a help type deal. Surprisingly, you responded immediately and said you were looking for someone like myself to connect with. So that's how we got going.
That was almost 3 years ago, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. 2013, I believe. January 13, that's correct. Yes, a very snowy January of 2013.
Time flies, and then I think it was I don't remember what month it was. Was it like June, end of June 2015, right, is when you came down to Florida?
Actually, it was May. It was May of 2015 is when I came down to connect with you and see what you're all about. You were working for an independent organization at the time. You're a producer, and you needed somebody that you could trust to come on down. You accepted my invitation when I reached out to you.
Awesome. And the rest is history, and here we are.
Absolutely.
Well, as I had previously noted, the discussion today for our first episode, I thought it would make sense to talk about what it's like to be a new finance manager. I don't know if you can remember that far back. For me, it was, it must be 12 years ago, 11 or 12 years ago, when I got my first shot in what we like to call the box. And I think back to the feelings and the emotions that I had, even leading up to that point where I wanted to become a finance manager. As I think back, I just think about how overwhelming, like initially there was, I was a good salesperson, so I thought I would be a good finance manager. And I don't know if you would agree, but is that how most Is that how you would think most finance managers start out?
Oh, absolutely. That's an agreeable statement. I can recall exactly how I felt that day that I got tapped on the shoulder. I was very excited. I was very anxious at the same time. But to be quite honest with you, I felt pretty poor because I took my buddy's job. Yeah, I was a green pea, so to speak, selling cars. It was only about a year and a half in on the floor selling when I got tapped on the shoulder. And that's probably why it was my buddy, because he spent more time on the corner of the dealership smoking and drinking coffee than he did in the finance office. So I think he kind of did it to himself. And it took me a while, years on down the road, to realize that. But yeah, that's an agreeable statement. A lot of anxiety, a lot of nerves. Can I handle this? Encompassing the responsibility. More, you have to take into consideration now that you're worrying about more than one person. You know, you're part of a department that's in charge of an intricate part of the piece of the way that the dealership works in the day-to-day operation.
Yeah, it's definitely a change going from being managed to managing. It was definitely a step. I remember when I was a salesperson, and I was probably 20 or 21 years old, and I was doing pretty decent, and I thought that I deserved a shot at the finance office, and I kept, banging on the manager's door saying, "Listen, I want my shot, I want my shot." He kept telling me, "No, no, no." Eventually, with my chest as big as it was, I said, "You know what, then I'm out." And I went and, I went back to school for some other stuff. Then I came back about 4 years later to work for a small used car store selling cars. Figured I'd work my way back up, and that same dealership, out of spite, hired me to upset the person I was working for. And I remember on my second day in finance, walking through the showroom towards the sales desk coming from the break room, and the GM, I won't use the language that he used, but yelled at me across the showroom, "Do you know what the F you're doing, Chris?" And I looked at him, and I said, initially I was kind of confused because I didn't really know how to answer the question, because the truth of the matter was if you literally what I was doing was walking to the sales desk. I don't feel like that was the answer he was looking for. So the other answer was, "No, I don't know what I'm doing." So when I gave him that answer, he promptly told me to get in my office and figure it out. And I was there was no training, formal training for me. I remember trying to figure out the DMS. I didn't even know what a DMS was. As a salesperson, at this time in the industry, we just started using the CRMs, and they were really basic. So I didn't know what a DMS was. I didn't know how to use it. The one we were using was DOS based. So a lot of confusion, I know, in the beginning for me in the first month or two, trying to figure out the computers and what functions and buttons did what. What are your thoughts on that, getting used to the computer systems? And
I came ushered into the box in a similar situation. I was a young guy on the sales floor, so at the end of the day, I didn't have much repeat business or referrals, any at all. And I was working bell to bell, hustling everybody that I knew. Friends and family were pretty much my only referrals. In fact, right when I got promoted in the box, the last car that I sold was actually my parents. This was when they were still selling S10 Trailblazers. They bought one off me. My entry into the box was because I banged on my special finance manager's door every day. I was looking for leads. I was looking for ups. And the way the structure was set up, the director was also the special finance manager, because back then not too many people knew how to structure deals and work a deal from back to front and front to back, so to speak. I would continuously say, "Hey, you have any leads? You have any customers?" And the process was they flipped the deal to you, and it was your job to land the customer in a car. They gave you 3 or 4 picks, and I became pretty good at it. And I was their main guy for doling out leads. And one day the director was off, and it was the lead finance manager there. And I kind of picked up in his place, and we kind of made the department work for a couple days. And when the director came back, they said, "Hey, you want to give this financing a shot? It seems like you do a pretty good job structuring deals and landing on customers on the right kind of cars," and the rest is history. Talk about a technology change. We were still using Verizon flip phones at the time, the Nokia phones and whatnot. So technology was still, it wasn't. It was just quite antiquated. My first DMS system was Reynolds & Reynolds, of course, but we call it a blue screen. But mine were still green screens. It looked like something that NASA used to launch the first space shuttle. We were still using Credit Bureau, and we had this pesky guy trying to sell us this product called DealerTrack. We don't need DealerTrack. So Yeah, it's quite interesting to go from sold whole tags to an office full of technology just to do your job.
Yeah, no, my first DMS was Arcona, but not the Arcona that's used through DealerTrack now. It was the black and green screen DOS-based system where enter didn't mean enter and spacebar didn't mean spacebar, and you had to put stickers all over your keyboard that renamed the keys so you knew what the heck you were pressing.
Absolutely.
Kind of trying to speak maybe to some of the newbies, the guys that have been in for maybe 1 to 3 to 6 months, if you had to give them maybe 1 or 2 single pieces of advice, what would you say to somebody that you knew is either just coming in or has been in only a short while to set them up for success in finance and maybe even to get their heads ready to move on beyond finance? Do you start looking at that early, or do you wait? How long do you wait before you start looking to move beyond finance, or do you want to move beyond finance?
Well, probably like yourself, and I know I speak for myself when I make the statement, but finance is the next step to the next level, so to speak. And essentially, and quite frankly, I've always migrated back to the box because that's where I have the most comfort, whether it be because I'm just in a routine or what have you. But I find that my strongest ability is still in the finance office as opposed to being on desk. And so I think the first thing that you got to let a newbie know or a greenie know is it's okay that you don't know everything. It's a marathon, not a sprint at this point. Naturally, the candidate or the guy or girl, the guy and the gal in the chair has somewhat of a sales ability. So that's why they essentially got elevated in the position. Ask questions. I mean, I think that's the biggest issue that most people in the business have at no matter what level, if they're a novice or a veteran, is the ego and the pride gets in the way. Nobody wants to extend their hand or raise their hand up because they feel that anytime someone asks a question, it's a moment of weakness. So I think that would be the first thing is to ask questions, ask what you don't know because you don't know what you don't know.
Oh yeah, I would say that making a mistake in the finance office can lead to quite a few headaches, if you will, quite a bit more than if you were to make a mistake on the sales floor. In finance, for some reason, it always seems that when you make a mistake, whether it be on a piece of paper or you goofed up a number or something, trying to find a customer to come back in and sign that form, man, it's like they bought a car to go on vacation for 3 weeks and you can't find these people. It's unbelievable to me. Yeah, I would agree that never assuming that you know anything and always asking questions. Not just for newbies. I mean, that's for even us veterans. If we're not 100% positive, working with me, I'm pretty confident in a lot of the stuff that I know, but I'm not afraid to ask questions if I don't know something, because you don't want to make that mistake and then have to track down a customer while you're trying to sign 4 or 5 others. It just doesn't work.
Well, errors are going to happen. I mean, it's just going to happen. You're brand new in the box. You're going to miss a signature. You're going to blow a call. I can recall, I don't know if I ever told you the story, but my very first car deal in the box, I said, yeah, I got this. And my director's like, are you sure? And of course, me being the young egomaniac that I was, I nervously loaded up the deal and didn't realize that I dated the whole deal was dated for the guy's birthday in 1974. So that guy rolled out of there with his tag expiring like 12 years ago. So my first car deal in the box was epic failure, a complete disaster.
That's funny. I would say, yeah, errors are definitely going to happen. Problems will always be bigger in your mind than they actually are. So I would say that because problems are going to happen, if one arises, you handle it right away. Don't let it fester, and get other people involved if you need to. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I made a mistake. Can you help me find a way to fix it? Because the longer you wait to handle them, the bigger they get, and typically they're bigger in your head than they actually are as far as problems go. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about with new guys, and it kind of goes back to this not knowing what you don't know, is the training aspect of it. Now, in my history, when a new person is put into finance, many dealers may send their new finance manager away for training. Maybe it's a week program, a 3-day program, or a 2-week program, and they'll go through this training class where typically they're taught some of the basic compliance things and menu training, and then they're sent back to the store. But the follow-up, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but the follow-up on that training seems to be pretty minimal. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I think that statement is quite spot on. I was having the same conversation with a young finance manager in my current organization. You go to a school and they teach you 100 ways to sell a service contract, but that's pretty much it. There's really no follow up or any other additional training beyond what you would call quote unquote formal F&I training. So I think what happens is a lot of guys, including myself, I fell into this trap. I became stagnant for a number of years. I came off the floor, went into the box, went through a formal 5-day training seminar, like most of F&I managers do, with a big box training program, and came right out of the gate, following the process, and had pretty decent results right off the bat. Ran numbers above the national average at the time. But after that, it pretty much got stale and stagnant. I mean, I wasn't getting any worse, and I wasn't getting any better. And I think what happens is, with a lack of follow-up to your initial training, you kind of get into a rut. You become stale because you feel like it's Groundhog Day for yourself, and you start to change things up. And the customer that you delivered this morning versus the customer that you delivered 2 weeks from now, they don't realize that your same pitch is your pitch is your pitch. But to yourself, it becomes repetitious and almost mundane. It becomes stale, and you start to look for creative ways to entertain yourself. At least that's how I felt, as opposed to your customers knowing the difference between the last minute you pitched 3 days ago, last Saturday. So I think that statement's very, very agreeable, and I'd like to see more follow-up with some of these training companies after the initial training seminar.
I agree with that. What I would also encourage some of the new guys to do, because just because we want it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but what I would suggest some of the new guys to do is, after they come back from that training, if there's a senior finance manager there or a director that they can talk to, anytime that they finish a deal, as soon as possible after that customer leaves the office, go with your senior finance manager, your director, sit down and walk through exactly what happened and where you feel like you may have missed something, and go over some of the things you feel like you did really well, and just do that as often as possible and get some feedback, because that feedback will help you on the next customer. Because when you're sitting, especially when you're new, when you're sitting in front of a customer, you don't have those instincts to react immediately when a customer says one thing or says something else. So to be able to go and sit with somebody who's been doing it for a while and say, hey, listen, these customers just left. This is what happened. This is how it went down. This is what I feel like I did right, but I feel like I could have maybe pushed a little harder on the tire and wheel. They said this to me. What should I have done? So I think that would be my advice to somebody who's not getting a lot of follow-up on the training, because unfortunately in the dealership environment, it seems like the training lacks in the finance office. They kind of rely on the reps. The dealerships tend to rely on the reps to come in, as often as they do, which sometimes isn't often enough, and sit down with these guys for 20 minutes at a time and try to train them on something that you can't do it in 20 minutes. So that would be my best advice for some of the new guys who are just coming out of a training, to continue that increasing their knowledge.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. It's such an instant gratification business that we work in, and we're programmed for results now. And we tend to hold ourselves to the same standard when it comes to our career or anything outside the car business. That's just how we become programmed. It's an instant gratification type business. So if you can't be the best guy or the smartest guy, you have to be the most resourceful guy. And I think that, again, that you were spot on that, find out what's working for people and mimic them and clone them, because this isn't a business that is very forgiving when it comes to learning curves, because, it's lost opportunity. And if you can shrink that learning curve down as soon as possible, you're doing yourself, your family, and your dealer, for that matter, some due justice by trying to minimize that learning curve so you can maximize as much opportunity potential as you can in a short amount of time.
I'd agree. And it kind of sparked me to just think about this too. This took me 3 years after becoming a finance manager to understand this. But when I first got the position, I looked at it as a job, right? That was my job. I was a finance manager, and I slowly kind of understood that it could be a career. But what took me 3 years to understand is that it is an industry. Finance and insurance in the automotive business is an industry, and there are so many now, anyways, even a lot more than when I first got into it. There's so many resources out there for new people via the Facebook pages, the forums, the magazines that are available online, and the ways you can connect with people through social media, reaching out to other people doing it in other locations. Man, if I had known that 3 years earlier, that's just one of those things that if I had understood that this is an industry and not just a job and not even just a career, I think would have really helped me as a new finance manager.
Oh, sure. There's no question that today there's many more outlets for hungry individuals that are just getting in the chair right now. And I also think that because of that, they're going to experience a shorter learning curve than what you and I had, simply because there's more information, there's more outlets, there's more people's there's more individuals you can knock on their door, and not only that, but you can get different aspects, different dynamics from those who do it in different ways and different methods. So not only do you do things the way that you train, the way that the organization wants you to do it with that training provider that does it, but you can also knock on somebody else's door and you can kind of hear their alternative way and just realize that there's more than one way to skin the cat, and whichever fits to your personality, your dynamic is what's going to work out best for you.
One of the things, Mike, that I want to throw out there is product knowledge. We know about it as an automobile salesperson and how important it is. But what about as a finance manager, knowing your products? Because you do have product. How important is product knowledge in the finance office?
It's absolutely imperative, especially with the way that the industry is shaping and the emphasis, depending on your owner or your dealer, where they want their emphasis on F&I income and revenue to come from. Right now, of course, products are going to be the lion's share of your income. So, for your success and for your own personal income and for the income of the department, it's pivotal to know your products, because that's your bread and butter. Your customers, if you agree with me, aren't going to buy into what you're selling them if you don't buy in yourself. And credibility is absolutely key. So when your customer asks you a direct question about whether it be a certain level of coverage, or about proration and cancellation, or does it work here, does it do this, does it do that, you have to be able to respond in a moment's notice and answer the customer's question, and that maintains your credibility or holds your credibility. The quicker you can react to the customer, the more solidified in your answer you are, and that will gain credibility in the eyes of your customer. So product knowledge is paramount.
I would say that when you're selling cars, and I know over time this has been more and more the case, but when you're selling cars, oftentimes a customer will come in knowing way more about the vehicle than you ever did. And that's okay. They have the internet to give them all of the information. They're studying one specific car and they're studying everything about it, where you're trying to learn 25 different cars and just know the hot buttons on each one. So it's normal for a customer to know more about it than a salesperson, where in finance, it doesn't work that way. Customers don't know much about the products. They know very little, a kind of an overview of maybe what they do, but they don't know the intricacies of each of the coverages that are available. So when they ask a question, you do need to be able to answer it because they don't know. So I would say as a homework assignment for anybody who hasn't done this already or needs to do it again, is to take home your 5 or 6 most commonly sold products, bring those forms home, and read those babies front and back. Know every word, know everything about the cancellation policies, how much rental car is covered, how long it's covered, what the cancellation policies are, what the limits of coverage are, what the aggregate amounts that they cover are, all of that fun stuff, the deductibles, who's underwriting it, who's underwriting the policy. There's one that we typically don't remember or don't think about. But these are all underwritten by insurance companies, and who's the insurance company backing it? Are they an A-rated insurance company? These sort of things would be good to know.
Oh, absolutely. And if you're truly looking for a career in the F&I box as opposed to just a job, that there's always the chance to have that awkward conversation with a customer that comes in for service a year and a half down the road and holds up that same document that you signed and says, you told me, so those can be very awkward conversations to have with a customer if you misinform them or you just shoot from the hip and give them an answer that they want to hear so they buy your product. That's something you should sure to be avoided.
I agree. So, I mean, I think we've covered some interesting stuff. I think that anybody that's new coming into the finance and insurance industry in the automotive business, or anybody that's been doing it for a short period of time, I think this would be a good listen for them. I think they could get some out of it. I think even for the veterans that listen to this and kind of refer back to what they felt like when they first came into finance, maybe it gives them some inspiration to give back to some of the young guns that are coming in to this industry. Unless you have any parting words on the subject, I do want to say, thank you for, giving me your comments and your thoughts on, what to expect as a new finance manager. Being my first guest on this, like I said, soon to be wildly popular podcast called Life in the Box. If you'd like, do you want to give out maybe your email? If anybody had any questions or concerns, wanted to follow up with you, did you want to give them any contact info?
Oh, absolutely, yes. As those that paid their dues and guided me, I'd like to return the favor in any way or form that I can. You can reach me directly on my personal email. It's mallen119@hotmail.com, and shoot me off any questions that you have. If you want to have a quick phone call or open up any type of dialogue, I'd be more than willing and more than happy to share my experiences on or off the record, if you will, and some of the growing pains that I experienced, and most of them being hard-headed and thick-headed, essentially, not listening to more wiser advice because I thought I knew everything. But, yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate, Chris, you having me on. I have no doubt that this podcast is going to spread like wildfire, and it's going to have, a lot of success. So, yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show, and good luck to all those that are listening to this that are considering F&I as their career, not just their job.
Now, Mike, one of the things that we're going to do with this Life in the Box podcast is at the end of every episode, the guest for the current episode is going to give us what the subject for the following episode is going to be. So I have to ask you, what do you want us to talk about in the next episode of Life in the Box?
Chris, this is a fantastic question, and I'm going to segue into that answer with kind of the topic of today's discussion about being new and finding your own voice and getting your own rhythm going. One of the most important things that you can do as an F&I manager is be an information gatherer. Now, whether you're doing gathering information to find out what the customer's driving habits are, or their trade frequency, or who the car is for. Also, you can gather and find information that you need to secure the best approval for your customer to the bank when you're pitching your side of the application and your story. So, my topic for next week's conversation would be to interview or not to interview the customer.
Well, there you go. Our next episode will focus on the debate on whether or not you should interview the customer. I can tell you I'm looking forward to recording that show. I personally have been on both sides of that debate. I hope you decide after hearing this episode and knowing what's in store for episode 2 to subscribe to this podcast and continue listening. If you're interested in being on the show, send an email to chris@themcdavidgroup.com. That's Chris, C-H-R-I-S, at the McDavid Group, M-C-D-A-V-I-D group.com. Thank you again, and until next time, enjoy your life in the box.
So what can you show me that my heart don't know?